WWF is working in the 6 major practices, which are on the freshwater is one of those pillars. If we talk about the freshwater, it covers the groundwater, water resources management, blue, green, and grey water. So all, if we categorize the water, so all these 3 are the major areas. So coming back to the presentation topic, you all are the learning people, so this is just only our observation and the data which we grabbed on the basis of the field and on the basis of the mapping of GIS. Floods terminology is not new in a country like Pakistan. There was a time when floods were considered a blessing, because it was said like once the flood water flows from any area, the riverine water goes, for the next 5 to 10 years the land is quite fertile. The reason is the sedimentation plus the nutrients, etc. But with the passage of time and due to industrialization or malfunctioning, we are facing challenges. And also climate change is another big threat. Pakistan is among the most vulnerable countries list, and as per German Watch, the vulnerability list from the past 5 years or so, we are continuously in the list of the high risk countries. So this is something on which we really need to think, like, because as I mentioned earlier, flood is not a new terminology in Pakistan. You can see from the screen like a series of the floods. I have just mentioned a couple of those. 1976, a big flood, and if we see the hydrological cycle, after a certain period of time, again floods comes in. So to what extent we were prepared in the past, and where do we stand right now? Because we have a big flood back in 2010, where the experts, there was a discussion similar kind of seminars at that time after that flood, policy making, IWRM, and if we just see in that 12 years what we have learned, and now again we faced a big super flood, 2022. I will not go into the details of the stats. You people know better than me, because there are different stats, like Pakistan has damages. Initial estimation was $10 billion, but now it's more than $30 billion, which is the estimation. And different international agencies are now, in October, they're actually going to have that kind of estimation, and some of the humanitarian organizations and international EU delegations, etc. So they visited some of the sites, and now they will compile the damages and losses and coming up with the figures after a consensus, which will be then published along with the losses. Okay, if we see the extent of the floods, most of the time, like if we compare that with the 2010 floods, right now hill torrents were one of the major cause. Yes, because in 2010, if you remember, high intensity, short duration rainfall was one of the major reasons due to which the floods were happened actually back in 2010 in Pakistan. But if we talk about the climate change, and if you remember, at the same time in Russia there was a fire outbreak in the jungles of the Russia. So you can see the diversity here. Super floods in Pakistan and in the neighboring countries due to the climate shift. What was happening, actually there was void, the direction of the wind was there, so that's why in the monsoon area there were different methodologies which the experts actually mentioned. And I also just drafted a blog on that, like what was the reason, the difference between the 2010 and 2022. So high rainfall of the shower was there at the northern side and it moved down. But The difference in 2022 was due hill torrents were one of the major reasons because it didn't give the enough time to displace the communities and to manage that water. And it was you can see from the screen, like in August 7 what was the extent, and in early September what was the difference. Like it was giving an intimation like the super flood is coming or the water is flowing from the different sides, from the drains, from the river, and as well as, but the hill torrents were one of the major, the cause due to which the main damages were. That was one of the reasons the Balochistan and Sindh were more affected, like their rural communities were underwater, and still the water is standing in some of the areas because we had a survey in some of our project sites. In the cotton belt area, still the water is there, due to which the waterborne diseases are there, and the different outbreaks are there. So the situation has been quite worse in the past weeks. But right now the government is quite mobilized. The other organizations, thank God, now they are working in collaboration with the local communities, and now they are trying to tackle and handle that area. So a few glimpses of the pictures. Okay, if we talk about the governance issues, which is one of the important component, and I believe after 2010 the same discussion was also happening in different forums. The coordination is quite important because this is something again that gap was seen apparently right now. The provincial and the federal coordination is quite important because we do have early warning system, but that early warning system should be quite precise at the district level, because that was the reason in the Sawat area why the floods coming. And you can see encroachment is another issue, but early warning system, it should be strengthened. They were seeing the gaps in the early warning system and the coordination, due to which we couldn't handle that big amount of the water. The second issue is the prioritization, because most of the time our approach has been working on the mitigation, not working on the adaptation side. This is another issue, because once the flood is there, then our all machinery is mobilized. Let's start work how to tackle that, and all of all the precautionary measures are there. Financial resources, yes, this is something which has been mentioned in the NDCs. Plus, it was already warned to the global world, like Pakistan needs a heap of the amount of the money. If we see, although our contribution into the GHG emissions and CO2 emission is quite lower, but if there is a slighter change in that quantity, it directly hits a country like Pakistan. So we really need the financial support from the government side as well as from the international level. Like they need to contribute. So that's why there are different programs which has been announced, like the GCF program, Global Climate Fund, JEF program, where we also have given recommendations. We're going to give recommendation in COP27 as well. Our CEO is going to attend that along with the government delegation. So they're going to do that kinds of the sessions and recommendations to global world. Like we really need to see how you can support us in that areas. The data collection has been another issue, because we met some of the experts, and they from the ITU University. So they said we already had run the model, and it was always there, and we intimated some of the government officials, yes, Sawat is at the hit list and some of the northern Pakistan areas are at risk, so you really need to do. But there wasn't any coordination or sharing of the data, because this is unfortunate. Sometimes we feel we are the only custodian or the owner of that data. The data sharing must be there with all the stakeholders to see and to disseminate what on the evidence basis we need to do. Okay, a few recommendations on the basis of the governance issues. Some of those has already been discussed. One of those is the inter and intra-provincial coordination that should be strengthened, because this is something which is quite important, and because instead of having the passive approach, we have to be very much active, because we are expecting floods every year, and I'm sorry to say we will have to be prepared for that, which we are not right now, because we are expecting the same floods or the higher floods in the coming future due to the climate shift and the climate change, because weather is also shifting. So we need to see how we can contribute in terms of the research, in terms of our expertise, in terms of the projects, how we are moving forward. So a few recommendations at the local level, grassroots level, how we can work. Early warning system is quite important. Plus, some of the areas, because right now everybody is talking about the NBS solutions, the nature-based solution. This is also another important area along with the dams and the reservoirs, because this is something where the floodplains needs to be made active. Unfortunately, a country like Pakistan, most of the floodplains along the riverine bodies are encroached in the majority of the areas. You can see example is Lahore, you can see the example of the big cities. That is one of the reasons, because if there is a little rift or the change in the weather pattern, all the urbanized areas are underwater. So this is something we really need to see, to identify the flood zoning, plus to improve the floodplain management, because this is something where we really need to focus on. At the national level, I'm just wrapping up the presentation, keeping in mind the time, because other respective presenters are also waiting for that, I believe. So, for the NBS, I just wanted to share here, like WWF Pakistan, along with the Ministry of Water Resources and Ministry of Climate Change, proposed a project to the GCF for the integrated floodplain management of the industry, where the flood water will be managed by the nature-based solutions, where the green infrastructure will be promoted along with the EBAs. So this is something which is actually a big project, and government of Pakistan, previous government and the current government both are promoting the concept of the nature-based solutions and the EBA, which is actually a combination of the civil structure. So this is something, because it doesn't require a lot of time, just like the dams, but it could store a huge water amount. I remember there was an expert, Dr. Vikram Soni from India. He visited Pakistan, I think a decade back, and he mentioned like River Ravi soil is having the capacity to store 40% of the water. Like this is something the River Ravi Indian side and Pakistan side. Like if soil is having that kind of the capacity, but we really need to promote that. How that water could be stored in the floodplains, in the wetlands, and in the other areas. So this is something, the connectivity is quite important. Like how to connect the wetlands with the water. When the surplus water is there, urgently we can divert. The channel should be there. So this is something on which we are working. And last month there was a climate crisis charter, which was actually a big seminar in Islamabad, where all the water champs from the different ministries, from the lead organizations, they participated that along with WWF Pakistan, and we came up with a charter, because this is something which was developed, and now all the organizations agreed who signed, like they'll be taking that forward actively at the global level, at the government level, as well as at the private sector level. So one of those is the advocacy for the loss and damages, to tell the global world like how much they are responsible, how they can play their role to promote, or how they can contribute to that in order to avoid the losses and damages in the developing countries like Pakistan. Promote the institutional governance issues. What are the gaps? How those could be strengthened? To map the climate risk and the vulnerabilities, as well as mainstream the crisis responses, because those remote areas where there isn't any mechanism of the early warning system, they are actually at the hit list. Plus, we really need to improve the the coordination between the different departments, and we really need to play our role how we can contribute for the prosperity of Pakistan. So I'll just stop here. Thank you very much for your time.